Kerry, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. I guess the first things first is, how do you decide to do something like this? How do you decide to start a golf company, much less a golf glove company?
Well, I mean, I guess my two passions are golf and business. So I'm a bit of I guess I'd call myself a serial entrepreneur. I've done a lot of different businesses, but nothing in something I'm this passionate about. I played college golf. I started playing in my teens. I fell in love with it right away. And I think it was really the pandemic. COVID kind of put some of my businesses in a position where I felt like I couldn't do more in those. And I could see where golf was heading. It was kind of my escape. And it was, I think, for a lot of other people. And I started thinking, if there's something I could do in golf, what would it be? And golf gloves have always been kind of in the back of my mind, sort of that underappreciated piece of equipment.
Why do you find them underappreciated, and why do you think that is? Do you think it's by golfers, or do you think it's by retailers, or both?
Probably both. Probably retailers would say, one of the challenges is all the different sizes. We have 26 sizes of every glove. So when you start thinking about men's sizes, women's sizes, right hand, left hand, we offer regular and cadet sizing. The cadet has the wider palm and shorter fingers. So sizing is a challenge. I think for retailers, having that much inventory on hand in person is a challenge. And that's why we like our subscription model that, once you lock in and you get your size sorted and you know that those are arriving every month, that can kind of solve that. I was kind of that guy. When I could find my size, I might buy as many as were on the shelf. And so I think that's one of the things. And then I think, even though I might have the gloves, sometimes I wasn't maybe turning them over as often as I should. I wouldn't use an old ball that often. I understood how that could impact my play, but I might, stretch a glove out for a few extra rounds. And it was in playing with, a good friend of mine now, business partner, Brad Fritch, who played on the tour. Like, he just wouldn't mess with gloves. He was using a fresh one. They're almost disposable to tour pros.
Sure.
They're just that important to them. And the thing that he said to me is, golf is a game of confidence. And the last thing, you don't need to leave anything to chance when score is really important, and making sure that that's the one you put on and put off before every shot. And it just says, this is fresh. I'm ready to go.
And from what you found so far from your customer base, are most of those folks, do you think, higher achieving golfers? Or are they players who think maybe they're not professional level, but do put time and consideration into what their equipment looks like, how fresh it is, how ready it is for play, as opposed to maybe a more casual golfer, or even one that's kind of gotten back into golf in the pandemic that maybe isn't quite as aware of how frequently they should swap out equipment?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'll bet it runs the gamut. I think largely, we launched with a Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign, and it was really well supported. And I think the idea was intriguing. I think they're pretty cool gloves. There's some unique style. There's a style component to it. There's a philanthropic piece. We're giving back to the game. So there's a bunch of different elements. I suspect those are the things that are more important. I think people are surprised at how good the gloves are that we've produced. They're as good as any glove on the market.
Yeah.
And that was important to us. We're not making any apologies. And so that, I think, surprises people. And then we are trying to educate them, especially on size. Most men especially, wear a glove that's too big.
So what would be the proper fitting that you're trying to get the golfer into via the education of Red Rooster?
The glove has to be like a second skin. So it has to be, I'm going to say, uncomfortably tight at first, but most people want to put a glove on and they want it to fit fairly easily. And what happens is, that's great at first, but it's leather and it stretches. And you get 2 or 3 rounds in, and all of a sudden, it's kind of that classic case of, when you start seeing, the strap sort of being pulled over.
Mm-hmm.
And I anecdotally, I see this now all the time, where I see people that I often see, they probably fit at first, and then a couple rounds in, it's too big, it's stretching out, and yet you've invested in it. You're probably going to see that glove through to its lifespan, and then you're going to go back and get exactly the same size and do it again. We're quite often saying, you know, try going down a size. It's going to be really tight at first, but it is going to stretch, and then it's going to fit you perfectly. It'll actually last longer, and it will retain its grip, and it's going to, you know, serve its purpose better. But it's definitely, it's a challenge, and there's an education component to it that we hadn't anticipated.
How long should someone actually have a golf glove? I mean, how often, let's say you're a casual player, not someone who's hardcore playing maybe once or twice a week, but the casual golfer, should they have their glove a little bit longer or even a little bit less than someone who plays frequently?
There's so many factors that it will, you know, that's, we get that question all the time, you know, how many rounds? And I think, you know, there's a couple things, first of all, that kill gloves. For moisture's big. So you need to keep the gloves flat and dry. The longer you do that, the longer they're going to last. So if you actually take care of the gloves, they can last longer than if you know, crumple it up. A wet golf glove, it's pretty much dead in the water. If you play with a beautiful leather glove in the rain, it'll never be the same. So if you have wet grips, or if you have dirty grips, those are a killer. Even cord grips, right? They go through gloves a lot faster. So, and depending on your grip pressure and a lot of different things, some people go through gloves faster than others. For some people, gloves last a long time. They have a very light grip. They have a very light swing. They don't hit too hard. They take good care of them. My personal thing is it's somewhere around 10 or 12 rounds. You know, you should be able to get a good high quality leather glove. Should last you 10 to 12 rounds if you do all the right things. It can be a little less depending on some of those factors. It can be longer. We've had customers send us gloves and say round 40. So it, you know, it can last longer. And I do think that the proper fit's key. When a glove gets loose, it wears out faster because it's sliding around in your hand. The better you fit it, the longer it will last. I think that's the one thing that we try to say about. That's kind of the selling feature, that if you go down a size, you actually might get 4 or 5 more rounds out of that glove. That's an incentive.
I get the sense, and you can tell me, of course, if this is wrong, but I get the sense that a lot of golfers think about golf gloves as either an impulsive purchase that they have to have, or they found their glove has a rip, got to get one in the pro shop, or it's almost a bulk purchase of, all right, it's a certain time of year, I'm going to buy a whole ton of gloves and save them up for later. How does Red Rooster kind of fit into how people purchase gloves currently, and what kind of changes do you have to make to consumer behavior to make it fit what you're trying to get them toward, which is more of a regular purchase, more of a subscription base?
Yeah, we look at the subscription as there's value there. So if you commit to a subscription, you will save. But it's meant to be that gentle nudge or reminder that when the glove arrives, it's an opportunity to look at the current glove you're using and say, like, is it time for a change? And the idea was sort of from, like, I was a big Dollar Shave Club guy. So I got on board. I've been using Dollar Shave Club for like 8 or 9 years. And that's what I liked about, you know, I never felt good about the razor buying process. It was always like super expensive. And when I'd get them, I'd use them longer than I should. And all of a sudden, when I went to the subscription model, the razors arrived. When they arrived, I knew it was time to change them out. And it kind of forced me to change them out and use fresh razors. And it's the same idea that often you need to be forced to use a glove. You know, if you're a tour pro and you get them all the time and they're somewhat disposable, you're pretty responsible with them. But I'd say even, you know, top amateurs, they're playing with the glove longer than they should.
Well, you're trying to kind of disrupt this model of I mean, I feel like most of the types of purchases are green grass. If you're like, oh crap, got a hole in it, got to be able to have that glove. Is there an aspiration to get toward green grass with Red Rooster, or are you want to stick in the kind of this lane for the foreseeable future?
We want to stay in this lane. This is where our focus is right now. We're 8 months in. We still have a lot to learn, and we think there's lots of opportunities even within this. Just in the last 8 months, we've rolled out some new products. We have a synthetic glove called a Range Rooster, and it's meant for warm up and practice. We'd often wear like a worn out glove to pound balls. And that can create some bad habits, and it doesn't give you that simulation. So this is a really durable, stretchy synthetic. It feels like a suede-like material.
Yeah. Really
durable, but it's meant to kind of like save the beautiful leather gloves for the course, use this for warm up and practice. Sizing, our initial beta testing, we didn't include cadet sizing, and 25% of that audience requested it. We've had a surprising number, especially in Canada, of right-handed golfers. 30% of our Kickstarter backers in Canada had requested right-handed gloves. So a lot of lefties because of hockey. And in the US, I think it was 12%. So there was a big change there. Female sizing, and even our kids sizing, we're on our second round of actual sizes. We have 4 different sizes. We're trying a new material there. We want to explore some other stuff. So we think there's a lot of runway for gloves at this point.
Is there something that, or I guess, what are the things you've learned, maybe either about gloves, sourcing, something else that I'm not thinking of, that you had no idea what to expect coming into this, or you were shocked to have learned going through this process and creating this brand?
There's a lot of stuff. I mean, there'd be a laundry list, but on the sourcing side, you name it. I mean, I've launched a number of different businesses, but mostly in services, never a physical product. So everything about how to design, product design, especially like down to the nitty gritty details, like what kind of Velcro, what color of Velcro, what kind of stitching, where to put different elastics, where to put some branding, where to put some extra stretch, what materials to use, who to source it from, packaging, you name it. But I think the first thing was I took a trip over to Indonesia. I guess the first learning was where most gloves are made. And I didn't realize that Indonesia was this big center for golf glove production. It's where there's a lot of great high quality cabretta leather, because it's a Muslim country and they eat a lot of lamb, and the leather is a byproduct of that. So there's a really good high quality supply. And then the second piece was that golf gloves are hand sewn. And I hadn't considered the production process.
Sure.
So I thought, when I went over to visit the factories, I thought I would see a lot of automation, and it was, it's a lot of people. It's these teams that everyone is doing, and it's a lot of sewing. So it's these teams of 20 to 25 people who produce these gloves, and each person is doing one unique stitch or one unique component of the glove and doing that one piece and doing it, repeating it, but doing it well. So there's this incredible craftsmanship. Like when you look at your gloves, it gave me a different appreciation for it, to just look and say, as a person made these stitches and put this together. I thought it was like going through a bit more of a glove machine. So I think that was probably one of the biggest, the sort of most eye-opening pieces to me when we first did the deep dive.
I guess at what point in the process did you realize how many decisions had to be made about the design of the glove? And was there any one person that could offer you feedback from the industry of, okay, here's maybe a template to start off of, but you can expound upon that? Or were you starting from nothing?
It was a little bit overwhelming. There were so many options. I started with the sampling process and getting all kinds of different samples and templates of gloves. And And that's when I realized that we had to really take some features that were important to us, because it really is, we really did try to take, like, you know, the elements that we thought were most important in gloves and meld them into our line.
Mhm.
And I was surprised to see like how many more options there were. I wouldn't say that we necessarily see all the options in North America. A lot of these manufacturers serve global clients. So gloves can be quite different in the UK and in Asia and in different climates. And so that was actually really helpful, but then we had to sort of boil it down and say, you know, we want this element with that. And there's an endless amount of customization. So that was kind of the cool thing. Like we wanted to make a really good glove, a high quality glove with good components, but we're also able to make a fairly unique glove. I think it has, you know, there's a fairly universal fit, but there are little things you can do to fit that won't impact whether it would fit you. It's how it would fit you and what's important. And so those are some of the little things that we were able to make tweaks on through the sampling process to really put our stamp on it. And I think I was also surprised at how many options you have for leather, both from a quality standpoint, but also for thickness. So we tried to build a glove that would serve, I'll call it like an active golfer, someone whose score is important. Our gloves aren't, you know, like we call them, you know, high quality gloves at fair prices. They're not cheap, but they're, you know, less expensive than premium brands. But we had to find the right mix of leather, because you want to have good feel, but you also expect durability. And so that was the fence that we continued to straddle. You know, has to feel really good, but it can't melt after a round or two.
So do you feel like you're going to continue to make kinds of adjustments over time to the makeup of the glove, to some of those decisions you had talked about, not necessarily aesthetic, but performance related, where you might go, okay, well, maybe we do want it a little thicker in version 2, or maybe we want to make a summer glove and a more of a winter glove?
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't had an order yet that we haven't made, you know, at least a minor adjustment to. We made some sort of major adjustments at the start, but we're continuing to fine tune, and we get great feedback. I mean, we had, you know, around 1,100 backers in the Kickstarter. We call them Red Rooster OGs, and they're pretty vocal. So they're not afraid to share their feedback. They're not afraid to tell us, you know, what they like and what they don't like. And we, you know, we're still relatively small and nimble, so we take it to heart. And Brad and myself, you know, we know enough about golf and gloves as well, that we're able to take that feedback and not just sort of knee jerk, but sometimes they reinforce what we were already thinking. So yeah, we're continuing to do some fine tuning. We do have some ideas for some new gloves for 2022. And we do want to make some minor adjustments, some things that we felt worked out. And sometimes we make a change and it's not for the better. And we're okay, you know, getting that learning at this point.
What's the lead time process look like for making a change? Is it 3 months out, 6 months out? What does that lead time look like for where you decide we're making the change to when a consumer can get it?
It's getting longer. It's not. When I visited the factories around this time last year, the lead time was 60 to 90 days. And now, you know, it's tripled. So, wow. So we're not as, we're making adjustments for next summer at this point. And we've been making adjustments all along. You know, even for our Kickstarter, we had placed those orders in February in anticipation of being fairly successful. And we were hoping we should have had them by, you know, March, April, and we didn't end up getting them until July, August. So everything kind of shifted from, and it's been sort of pushing out even further. Indonesia was actually one of the hardest hit countries for the Delta variant. and those factories are still under a 50% lockdown. So they haven't really been able to catch up. So our plannings had to be even better. We're hoping that that'll come down. So at a point in time, you could be fairly nimble, but I think under the pandemic, you're less flexible. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our 1-for-1 glove. You know, we do donate a glove through what we call Play It Forward partners. The First Tee has been amazing to us. We work with a number of chapters. We're working with some smaller organizations as well. And the point is that we want to make a real positive first impression for those who are learning golf for the first time. And so when they're learning the game, we love for them to get a free glove and get it and feel truly welcome, and sort of roll out the Red Rooster carpet for them for their first impression, first sort of foray into the game.
Well, Kerry, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've learned a lot from this, so hopefully people watching and listening have learned a lot from everything that you've spoken about with this. You guys are making really cool gloves. You're doing something really interesting. And thank you so much for taking the time to kind of dive in with it, with us.